What do you think is important about inner work for leaders, executives?
Inner work is a form of learning and development. It is. And I put it next to more traditional learning and development paths. And I juxtapose these two things together. And in my mind, when I say more traditional, I think of that as learning skills. So there's one form of coaching and training and learning development, which is, hey, I'm getting leadership skills. I'm becoming more skilled at executing things. And I think that's really valuable for increasing your impact and capability and competence. It's not to discount that. But in my personal journey and my journey with the people that I work with, there's that line of work has its limitation. And the limitation specifically comes around this term that is also a conscious leadership group term, which is reactivity. What reactivity is when something happens that comes in and I trigger myself with it. Something happens where there's some fear that drops in. I feel scarce. Something feels a threat. And reactivity is actually an unconscious reaction. It says something happens, and without me even realizing it, boom, I'm automatically reacting in a way to attempt to fix the problem. And that reactivity in that moment may or may not be productive. Oftentimes that reactivity was a learned response to something that happened way back when I was a kid. So I'll use a personal example here, which is I said before, my father was often angry. And what my response to anger when I was a kid was to withdraw. The safest thing for me to do, the way that I can fix this problem when anger shows up, is to just withdraw and get small. And that got embedded as a reactive pattern. Now, there's no skill that I can learn that combats the fact that every time anger shows up, I withdraw and I get small. And as I go on, because it's automatic, I'm unconscious to it. And now I'm not a kid with my dad anymore. So that reactivity may not actually be effective at really addressing the root of the problem. And this is a very niche thing, but this is happening all day, every day. I know it happens with myself, with the people that I work with. Something comes in, I feel threatened, and I automatically react to fix it. And that automatic reaction has a set of pros and cons associated with it. And what the inner work does, in my experience, is it helps me identify what are those automatic reactions, helps me actually become conscious of something I'm totally unconscious to. That's the magic of the inner work. As I did it, was for the first time in my life, people pointed to blind spots. Mm-hmm. Right? Like everybody's probably familiar with this term blind spot. I'm sure you are too. But most of the time when I got feedback from people, I kind of knew about it. I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, sure. I know about that. But in the inner work, there was feedback that was pointed to me that I felt like I was caught with my pants down. Oh, I am naked. I have never seen this about me before. I see how it's true. Oh my God. And so it can be disorienting, but the goal is if we can start to make those automatic reactions conscious and then play with them and do the work in such a way where it's no longer an unconscious automatic reaction, where I can actually come into choice about it, which is the shift from reactivity to responsiveness. Suddenly, my efficacy can go through the roof because all these ways that I'm automatically solving problems that maybe solve them, but also have destructive second and third order consequences, I can see that and start to experiment and choose other things that on net are more effective at actually solving the problems. Mm-hmm. And there's no amount of executive presence or public speaking skills or management skills that solve for that. And so you want both, but what I find my story is that in our culture, we tend to really aggressively index on the training and skills and learning and development. I know that was my path. And at some point, those really start to not have an effect. Every marginal new skill development you have isn't actually moving the needle that much more. And for me, when I found I was at that point, the inner work was explosive, man. It was like, wow, okay, I see all these ways where I'm getting all sorts of in my own way. And as you start to strip those back and shift them, some real magic can happen.